In Blackburn Diocese, we have 190 Church of England schools, the vast majority of which are voluntary aided schools. So when the Church of England Synod passed its resolution in February 2020 that it would be zero carbon by 2030, that created a particular challenge for us as that resolution covered voluntary aided schools. It posed us some interesting questions. How do you retrofit decarbonise school buildings? Is it possible? How much would it cost? Is the technology out there? And are the timeframes realistic? In order for us to answer some of those questions, we bid for government funding through the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme. And in March 2021, we were fortunate enough to be granted £8.4 million to begin to answer those questions. How do you retrofit decarbonise school buildings? We didn't really know the answer at that point, so we needed some specialist help.
Here at Samlesbury Primary School, we've had the challenges of working with a listed building. It's a small rural primary school in the middle of a farmer's field. It's adjacent to a listed church with listed railings. There's a graveyard. The complexities of the actual structure of the building as well has thrown in some complexities there. So we've got a pitch roof, we've got existing windows. There were already UPVC windows, so we've gained from the energy efficiency from the UPVC double glazed windows. But we were looking at the existing flat roofs, so we did a survey on the existing flat roofs to increase the thermal efficiency of the flat roof.
Working on a school like Archbishop Temple School here is a challenge. It is a listed building with all the constraints that apply to that. Because it was built at a time when school design was quite a different thing from what it is today. I suppose as an architect, when you come to a building like this with a view to reducing its carbon footprint, the main things that one would look at are the physical structure of the building, particularly obviously its thermal insulation. And then secondly, what is the current heating system? Are there ways that could be made more efficient? And then I guess thirdly, what are the likely opportunities in terms of physically where could you put additional plant and equipment in order to reduce the carbon footprint? There's a lot of single glazing and a lot of that is still here. Some of it has been replaced rather badly, frankly, by UPVC double glazed windows, all of which detract from the character of the listed building. So there's a lot of issues to deal with. So we have to be careful what we do to it in order to bring it up to proper standards. And that is one of the challenges we face, I have to say.
At St Lawrence's, we have a number of long-standing issues that are increasing energy usage massively on this school. They have a traditional oil-fired boiler, and that is using a lot of energy, releasing a lot of carbon. We have a number of roofs that aren't insulated. We have windows that are very inefficient because they're leaking, and there's a lot of air movement around the classrooms. The cavity walls are not insulated. A number of the doors are single glazed. And the largest part of the work at St Lawrence's will be the boiler systems, the plant room and the controls. It's oil at the moment, and what we're considering is high efficiency gas condensing boilers, air source heat pumps, hydrogen boilers or ground source heat pump systems, all of which need to be investigated to see which will provide the best long-term efficiency while still generating the heat that's required for a building of this size and nature.
A few months on and back at Samlesbury, work is now well underway, but it's not without its challenges.
We've had to consider various things as part of our consideration of installing the air source heat pump at this site, mainly due to the lack of space. This is a very small primary school with very little land around the school. So we had to seriously consider the size of the units that needed to be located externally. So we have opted for more of a domestic type unit on this particular site. The electricity supply for this particular air source heat pump has been quite complex in that we have to work with third parties bringing in a new incoming electrical supply. Within this particular site, it is very difficult because we've got farmers' fields, we've got a main carriageway that is quite some distance away, but also we have a graveyard adjacent to the school. We've considered the running costs for the school. We've carried out some analysis with our mechanical and electrical consultants. The drawback of installing an air source heat pump in this particular school, working with existing heat emitters and radiators, will have an impact upon the electrical costs, running costs for the school, unfortunately. So we are considering the installation of photovoltaic cells on the roof, which will be considered towards the end of the project. It was very difficult at the beginning of the scheme to fully understand what was involved with the scope of works, because it's new technology. It's been installed in primary schools, which I believe hasn't been done previously. So we've gone into this eyes wide open, but we're learning as we go along. We are reasonably comfortable that everything that's in our control will be completed by the end of October. We are, however, in the hands of third parties. Thankfully, we've got the air source heat pumps at this particular site, but we need the engagement of the incoming supply company to be able to actually activate the air source heat pumps so we can install them. But until we get this new electricity supply active, up and running, we can't switch over the kit, unfortunately. So even though we're going to be activating the kit during the heating season, we'll be working with the school to try and minimise the impact of that.
Over in Chorley, the summer holiday is being used to lay the pipes for the new ground source heat pump, but there have been one or two surprises too.
As you can see, there's a lot of disruption to the playing fields to provide a ground source heat pump. Luckily, they have a large playing field area that we are able to use here. So, whilst it's very disruptive, it will be soon back into use for the school. The calculations showed that we needed to lay approximately 6,000 linear metres of pipe work through the playing fields to provide the heat output that the school needs. Unfortunately, once we investigated the existing playing fields, we found a high voltage cable running through the playing fields, so that restricted our area somewhat, and we ended up having to revert to partial pipe work and partial borehole system. So what we'll end up with here is about 4,500 linear metres of pipe work and then 7 boreholes to produce the output that we need. The boreholes will be approximately 150 metres deep, and they will be created using a drilling rig that will lay the pipework through the ground. We started physical work on site as soon as the school finished, around about the 22nd of July, and all of the work to the playing field, including the pipework and the boreholes, will be completed by the beginning of September. We'll then look to reinstate the playing fields and have them back in school use by hopefully the beginning of the winter term, January 2022.
Thanks.
Within the school, we've had to increase the number of heat emitters slightly because of the flow temperatures that we'll achieve from the ground source heat pump, but it's not significant, and we are able to use quite a lot of the existing pipework and radiators. And in addition to that, we've also replaced all the lighting in school to LED lighting to reduce the electrical load, and we've also introduced solar panels on the roof, again to provide direct energy, not to have to take it from the grid. So again, that will work towards the overall energy efficiency and reduced use of mains electric. At St Lawrence's, they were able to source approximately £400,000 worth of Salix decarbonisation grant. The work itself has cost significantly more than that because there is a number of factors that we've found as we've developed the scheme that have increased the costs. The introduction of boreholes instead of pipework has increased the cost significantly, and the availability of resource and materials over the summer of 2021 has also significantly increased costs. There have also been a number of hidden costs that we weren't aware of when the decarbonisation plan was prepared, such as having to remove asbestos from the boiler room, and also the removal of the oil tanks and availability of resource to get people to do the basic jobs has been more expensive than we would have expected.
10 miles north in Preston, they are also spending the summer boring holes ready for the ground source heat pump. But how will it actually work?
The ground source heat pump scheme is quite simple in theory, although in terms of its technical detail, we've appointed some consultant engineers to help with that. But in essence, the ground source heat pump scheme is quite simple. It consists of a series of boreholes. They'll be about 150 metres deep here, down which you pump liquid, and then it's pumped back out and it comes out at a slightly higher temperature. You divert that back into the plant room, and then through a series of technical pieces of kit, which tells you how much I know about it, but through that it gets converted for use in the throughout the school, and it is the existing system of radiators that are used for that. So it simply takes the place of the hot water supplied by the boilers. And what we're able to do here is we have 20 boreholes planned in a first phase of the work. We'll see how that goes, and then we may, if we're able to get more funding we'll be able to add to that into further phases in the school. We won't be able to decarbonise this large building in one hit, so to speak. It is a phased operation. And I have to say, as we stand here, things are on programme for completion by the end of September in what we want to do. But this will be a first phase here. We'll need as much again to finish it off. If I had one piece of advice to the powers that be in Westminster, it would be just give us a bit more time. That has been the real pressure here, is to get the thing done within the programme.
The summer holidays are over, and so back in Chorley, it's time to repair the playing field. The ground source heat pipes have been buried and connected to the plant room.
So we're in the plant room at St Lawrence's at Chorley, and the heat pumps are installed, the ground source pumps are all in place, and we are producing hot water for the school. We're just in the process of changing radiators and pipework throughout school, and that will then allow them to get the heating back on and running for the middle of October, with all the work finally finished by the end of October half-term holiday. There's 3 aspects of work that we still have to complete. We've got some insulation to do on a flat roof, which we're planning for October half-term. We've also got to install the cavity wall insulation to another third of the cavity walls because we couldn't get around for access because of the other work that was going on. And the other piece of work that we're going to do over half-term is the air tightness test, and that will identify that all the other pieces of work that we've done throughout the summer have been successful. The school have worked with us very, very well and have been so enthusiastic about the project. I think it's only been made possible to get to this stage by the school's buy-in to the scheme, and they've encouraged us all the way through and have been helpful to every request that we've made. They've put up with the disruption. They were happy to give their playing field over until January, and they've really made the project what it is.
And pupils at St Lawrence in Chorley were so keen to find out more about the decarbonisation project, they called in the experts and gave them a grilling.
Chorley St Lawrence When I was asked about decarbonising the building, I was over the moon. I was delighted. A project of the size that we've had done would cost an awful amount of money. The funding that we were going to receive meant we could do it properly, thoroughly, and it's also something that we could teach the children whilst also making our building much more efficient. And I was delighted. I was over the moon to be approached to do this. The project has given us the opportunity just at this point in time as a starting point, as a platform to teach the children about how we can reduce our carbon footprint. There's a lot we have learned from it in terms of new equipment that can be used to heat a building. Taking that forward, we want to try and educate our children further on how that might affect them in the future. We have an eco team who are passionate about driving this forward and teaching the other children about it and the wider community, their families. So for them, they're excited for us to be at the forefront of this and how they can take that education forward.
And the eco team was so keen to get their message across that they invited local councillors and their MP to come and see the scheme and answer some of their questions.
So if everyone had an electric car, where will they charge them and how much will it cost to charge their own car at home?
We've got to start planning the future, and part of that future is planning future houses, making sure that they have the power in order to source electric vehicles. We all know there's a problem. We all want to talk about it. Words are wonderful, but it will be actions that will make the difference.
And in Preston, over on the muddy playing field, work has gone well, despite a fairly major issue.
Last time you were here, we were just about to start drilling the boreholes, I think, and I'm pleased to say that they are now complete. All 20 were drilled during the summer holidays, not without some difficulties. We found an unexpected layer of granite which destroyed one or two of the drilling bits and so on. So there were one or two issues with it. And because of the programme, the delays of that, we needed to get additional rigs in. So it wasn't without difficulties, but we did get them all drilled and the equipment off-site. So that part of it went very well. I'm very pleased with the way the contractors managed that. They were very, very good. So yeah, that went well. A new scheme we've saved. Unfortunately though, we can't operate the ground source heat pump yet because we need the electrical power for it. And if you recall, we have had to increase the size of the transformer for the school. The original 200 kVA transformer wasn't big enough to handle the ground source heat pumps. And so what we did, we've diverted some funds into providing a larger transformer and reduced the amount of area of the school that is going to be heated by the ground source heat pump. They've promised a date at the beginning of December for actually bringing it and installing it. We've built the slabs, which you can see. So we're all ready, we're up and running in time for that. But we can't actually commission anything until we have that electrical power. The other element to this was the solar panels, and if you recall, we decided that we would install those on carports and covering 12 bays of the car park. In other circumstances, doing something like this would be almost impossible. Because you can't always predict exactly what's going to happen. There's got to be cooperation and a kind of a feeling of a joint endeavour, like we're on the same side, particularly with the replacement windows. And there, obviously, when you're working on a classroom with a class, you can't have a class in there because of the noise. So managing that on a day-to-day basis has been quite tricky, but they've been very, very good. And we are actually on schedule with our window replacements. So we're really looking now towards the end of December for completion of the project rather than September. We just need to kick it over the line, as it were, in the next months or so and get it commissioned and up and running.
It's a fantastic opportunity to get engaged with a project that's so vital to us as people who are custodians of the earth, really. From a Christian point of view, we have to look after the one earth that we have, and no more so than a project like decarbonising a school. So our young people are absolute first-hand witnesses of the efforts we put in place to try and look after our earth and its precious resources.
And as autumn turned to winter, the children and staff at the small school tucked behind the church at Samlesbury began to feel the benefit of their newly insulated roof. But there is still a long way to go.
At Samlesbury here, we've still got the air source heat pumps to install because unfortunately we still don't have the electrical supply. It was insufficient, so we have to apply to Electricity North West to upgrade to provide sufficient electricity for the new air source heat pumps. So not only have we got a farmer's field to bring the electricity cable through, but we've got a graveyard and a church and also residential properties. So we were looking at alternatives to bring it down Potter's Lane. Potter's Lane is a very narrow lane which serves the school, the church, but also residential properties. So we couldn't even consider bringing an excavation down that road, plus the extent of the excavation would have been extremely expensive. We can be quite creative with the installation of solar panels at this site. Because the traditional route of installing them on the roof areas would be quite difficult here, but we have quite a number of fields adjacent to the site, so solar farms would be ideal to be installed here, which would not only benefit the school, they could benefit the church and neighbouring residents, but there's going to be a lot of personnel involved in negotiating that, but it's definitely a consideration in the future. It's been an extremely frustrating but rewarding scheme, so I wouldn't say I wouldn't go through it again. We'd definitely go through it, but we'd go with our eyes wide open, learning from the lessons that we've gone through to get to this point. It is frustrating dealing with third parties. Even when we've gone through all this process with Electricity North West, there's still going to be a delay with installation of electricity meters as well. So then that is another process that we've got to follow. That's another lesson that we've encountered, that we've learnt from along the way.
We were really keen to take part in this decarbonisation programme, and we'd already felt as a school that our use of oil and electricity was probably not something that was sustainable, with lots of the things we talked about in worship and PSHE about making our school a really good and positive place for everyone to the future. The contractors have been really considerate. We've had really great communication with them. Everything was talked through before we began, and anything that we did have concerns about, we had big fences put around to keep the children safe, and we only really lost a small amount of playground space. The children in school have been involved in the process along the way. I think it's been difficult for them to see the impact until we got to the winter months. They could actually feel it, probably more than see it. So we got some photos. One of the contractors took photos from above. We got a drone actually sorted out so they could take the photos and see as the insulation went on the roof. They could see the hall ceiling changing, they could see the library roof changing. And they really felt through Pupil Council and the comments that we came back from them this autumn and winter that the work really made a difference to the heat and to the warmth and the comfort of us in school, which has been brilliant. So instead of thinking we had to get coats on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because it really did get cold on cold days, we just felt that comfort. So our Christian vision of being a place that is growing and learning and living and inspiring others, which is very important for us, was really part of that. And the children think that is amazing, that we can make a difference for generations to come.
And it's that desire to make a difference for years to come that has driven forward this project. At times there have been difficulties and there have been challenges, but we have managed to overcome them. If I've learnt anything from this project, it's that everything is expensive. Everything is disruptive, but at the end of the day, everything is possible. And so we have taken the first few steps of a journey that we all want to go on.